Number 10. At a wedding. In 2009, a bride-to-be decided that she wanted to do something unconventional for her bouquet toss at her upcoming wedding in Italy's Tuscany region. When the big day came, she announced that someone would be throwing the flowers from a small plane. 44-year-old Isidoro Pensieri was entrusted with the task. Right after he tossed the bouquet, the plane's tail rotor sucked it in, causing the engine to explode. The ultralight aircraft began to dive and nearly hit a hostel before crashing in the woods. Pensieri broke both his legs in the ordeal, and he also sustained serious facial and head injuries. The pilot, 61-year-old Luciano Nanelli, escaped without injury. It's unfortunate that the close call is what made the wedding unforgettable, rather than a unique bouquet toss. But it's a relief that everyone survived and that the wedding didn't become a tragedy. As The Guardian pointed out, it's probably a safer idea for a bride to stick with tradition and throw her flowers from a balcony, a chair, or the top of a staircase, as recommended by Martha Stewart. Number 9. Making love in midair. A flight lesson in Rainbow Lake, Florida took a sudden deadly turn in 1991 when the light aircraft began to wobble and then broke apart in midair, killing both the instructor and the student. The incident was shocking, especially since the flight instructor was an experienced Army pilot who had served in the Vietnam War. First responders found the pair in what was later described as a state of voluntary undress, and one of the front seats was fully reclined. Simply put, their clothing didn't show any signs of being ripped or otherwise damaged, indicating that the instructor and his student had taken their clothes off on purpose. There were no signs of either individual wearing a seatbelt or shoulder harness. All things considered, it was pretty clear that the two had decided to join the Mile High Club. Unfortunately, their poor judgment led to a completely avoidable tragedy. An investigation found that the crash resulted from the pilot's decision to pay attention to things other than the flight. In the words of the official report, contributing to the accident was the exceeding of the design limits of the airplane, leading to a wing failure. In other words, it sounds like the plane wasn't built to handle the activity that was going on inside of it. Number 8. By the airport. In 2012, 33 people died tragically when the UT Air passenger plane they were on crashed in northern Siberia. The aircraft had just taken off from Roshino International Airport in the city of Tyumen when it began to roll in the air. It crashed into the snowy ground, split in two, and exploded into flames. There were 39 passengers and 4 crew members aboard when the horrific tragedy occurred. Rescue crews sprang into action and found a handful of survivors shortly after the disaster, which came to be known as UT Air Flight 120. Unfortunately, 5 of them were in grave condition. Sadly, an investigation found that the accident was entirely preventable. The aircraft had not been de-iced prior to takeoff after spending hours in the freezing cold and snow. Even more shockingly, the crew was aware of this but decided against de-icing the plane anyway. So it's no wonder that when the aircraft took off in 0-degree weather with mixed snow and rain, things went terribly wrong. The pilots were unable to regain control of the plane, and their carelessness cost dozens of human lives. Number 7. Into a suburban home. One of the places people tend to feel safest is inside their house. But sometimes, even the walls of the sanctuaries we call home aren't enough to protect us. On February 12, 2009, a passenger aircraft entered an aerodynamic stall while carrying 45 passengers and 4 crew members from Newark, New Jersey to Buffalo, New York. The plane had been cleared for a final approach and was just minutes from landing when it crashed into a home in Clarence Center, New York. Shortly before the catastrophe, the pilots had requested to descend from 16,000 feet to 12,000 feet amid inclement weather. They were given permission to do so, but the aircraft soon disappeared from the sky and stopped responding to transmissions. Air traffic control requested help from 2 other flights who were unable to spot the missing plane. Data recovered after the crash revealed that the plane pitched up, then down, and rolled as it rapidly lost altitude. In the minutes leading up to the disaster, the pilot and co-pilot could be heard talking about how there was significant ice on the plane's wings and windshield. There was no emergency declaration before the aircraft slammed into a house just 5 miles from the runway. The fuel tanks ruptured upon impact and the plane burst into flames. All 49 souls aboard died, and the homeowner, Douglas Wileneski, also lost his life. His wife, Karen, and their daughter managed to escape with minor injuries. Their house was completely destroyed. 12 nearby homes were evacuated, but there was ultimately very little damage to the surrounding houses. The surviving members of the Wileneski family sued the airline involved in the crash for their pain and suffering. They reached an undisclosed settlement agreement in 2014. The families of several passengers who perished also sued, with most settling out of court for undisclosed sums. Number 6. In the middle of the desert. In recent years, news headlines alerted the world to the wreck of UTA Flight 722, which crashed in the Tenere Desert in 1989, killing all 170 souls on board. The aircraft was en route from Brazzaville in the Democratic Republic of Congo to Paris, France, when a bomb exploded in a luggage compartment, causing the plane to rip apart in midair. Investigators traced the bomb back to Libya and theorized that it was planted as revenge against France for supporting Chad in a border dispute with Libya. 6 Libyan nationals were found guilty in a Parisian court, even though they weren't present because their country's government refused to hand them over to France. The crash became known as the Forgotten Flight until 18 years later, when the surviving family members of those who perished traveled to the remote site to build a memorial. When they arrived, they found pieces of the wreckage, which had sat there for nearly 2 decades undisturbed by humans. Volunteers from an organization of the victims' families spent 2 months working alongside local residents to build what's been dubbed the world's most remote memorial. It consists of a circle of dark stones measuring 200 feet in diameter. The stones were transported more than 70 miles to the site. 170 pieces of broken mirror are scattered throughout the site, one to represent each victim of the tragic crash, and the starboard wing of the plane was used to hold up the main part of the memorial. Widespread attention was finally drawn to the site in 2013 when someone spotted it on Google Earth. Have you heard of this wreck before? Let us know in the comments down below, and if you're liking this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Number 5. On Arizona's highest mountain. With an elevation of 12,637 feet, Humphreys Peak is the tallest mountain in the state of Arizona. The wreckage of a plane that crashed into it during World War II can still be seen today. A U.S. Army Corps B-24 Liberator bomber crashed into the side of the mountain on the night of September 25, 1944. It landed on a bed of boulders in a remote and difficult-to-access area. The aircraft was destroyed, and all 8 crew members died aboard. Passers-by kept reporting the downed plane as a new wreck. So during the 1950s, the United States Forest Services used dynamite to further distribute the wreckage. Today, the rocky field remains littered with engine parts, a nearly entirely intact wing, and other debris. Authorities warn hikers to search for the wreck at their own risk. It's reportedly hard to find and requires walking through a field of boulders, which is dangerous for obvious reasons. But for those wishing to see one of the more seldom spotted memorials in the U.S., the trek is well worth the risks. Number 4. On a black sand beach. The black sand shore of southern Iceland's Solheimasonder Beach is home to a deteriorating Douglas DC-3 military plane. It crashed there in 1973 for unknown reasons while being flown by U.S. Navy pilots. Everyone survived, but no one was able to explain just exactly what happened that day. Investigators suspected that the accident may have been caused by an empty fuel tank, and that the pilot may have tried to access it before the crew had no other choice than to make an emergency landing. For one reason or another, the wreck was simply left in place where it remains today. The site is haunting, and a good portion of the fuselage is gone. The wings are also missing, and only half the tail remains. Despite this, the aircraft is in remarkably good condition, especially for having spent over 40 years on the volcanic beach, where conditions are known to be harsh. Most of the cabin is still there, along with the wing engines. According to local legend, a farmer removed and sold the missing half of the tail, but the rumor has never been proven. The otherworldly wreck is located somewhat off the beaten path, where it's surrounded by nature, but it's also one of Iceland's most famous crashed planes. It draws a consistent stream of curious visitors who are free to explore what's left of the DC-3 as they wish. The site can be reached independently by car or as part of a guided tour of Iceland's southern coast. Number 3. Disaster upon landing. In 2010, a plane fell from the sky like a leaf while preparing to land during a routine passenger flight in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It smashed into the ground less than a mile from the runway, killing the pilot and 19 passengers. There was only one survivor. At first, officials were baffled over what the possible cause of the crash could be, but the situation became clearer when the lone survivor explained that a small crocodile measuring just a few feet long had escaped from an overhead luggage hold as the plane approached for landing. Someone literally smuggled the reptile into the cabin. A panic ensued, causing a stampede among the terrified passengers. They scrambled toward the cockpit, causing the weight to shift within the aircraft. The plane quickly destabilized and fell from the sky. 2 months after the crash, an expert told The Guardian that it was extremely unlikely that the reptile was to blame for the deadly disaster. But investigators were unable to confirm that a suspected fuel shortage caused the accident, and the general consensus seems to be that the weight shift resulting from the crocodile's appearance is at fault. Number 2. In the jungle. Tucked away in the jungle on the Dutch Caribbean island of Curaçao is a wrecked plane reminiscent of a scene from Indiana Jones or the TV series Lost. The weathered and overgrown aircraft has clearly been at the site for a number of years, but nobody seems to know how it ended up there. It represents the remnants of a twin turboprop built by the Nihon Aircraft Manufacturing Company of Japan, which flew under Aruba Airlines as Flight P4YSA. The plane's wing and twin props have been removed. At one point, there were reportedly plans to turn it into a restaurant, but the vision never panned out. There are no records of the aircraft's owner or what happened to the plane before it came to a rest at the remote site. In fact, truth be told, it's unclear whether the aircraft crashed or if someone moved it there. P4YSA was one of two of its particular model that the airline bought in 1986, with the other being classified as Flight P4YSB. While Flight YSA ended up in the Caribbean jungle, YSB suffered a much different fate. But unlike YSA, its fate is traceable. YSB was deliberately sunk as an artificial reef after it was damaged beyond repair during Hurricane Lenny in 1999. It's not too far away from its twin after having come to rest 40 feet beneath the waves off the coast of Aruba, which is located about 70 miles west of Curaçao. Number 1. Entangled in the trees. For many years, there was a mysterious small plane nestled among the branches of a tree at Heritage Park in Mission, British Columbia. All that's left of the single-seater aircraft is a mangled mass of metal consisting of what looks like a cockpit roof and perhaps a wing. Very few people know about the wreck. In fact, even many locals are unaware of it, according to Atlas Obscura. Additionally, nobody knows exactly when the plane crashed, just that it's been there since at least 1971. And the only way anyone knows this is based on the scrawlings of a graffiti artist who took the time to attach the year to their work. There are reportedly no records of the plane or the crash, and it's possible that it was moved to the trees from elsewhere. So it's unclear whether the deteriorating aircraft is even at the original site of the accident that destroyed it. It's almost as if it just appeared one day out of nowhere. In recent years, the pieces have fallen out of the tree and onto the ground in two separate places. Today, they sit near trails that run through the park and are easy to get to. But reaching the site requires roughly half an hour of walking, so getting there does require some effort. Heritage Park is a popular place for mountain biking, hiking, dog walking, and other outdoor activities, so you're likely to run into visitors during your trip. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next time for another amazing video right here on American Eye.